Hi everyone, I hope you're all okay. So this is the first in my series of IGTVs called Tara's Teaching Tips. So I asked you to send in any questions or worries that you may have, and then in this video I've chosen a few that I'm going to go through to try and answer. Unfortunately I can't answer them all, but hopefully the ones I do answer won't just help the people that ask them, they'll hopefully help lots of you. So a little disclaimer first, I am a trainee. I literally finish my training next week, and then I'm going into my NQT year in September. So I'm not saying that I have all the answers, I'm not saying that I know everything, because I definitely don't, but I'm just here to try and help any people that are in the same position as me going into their NQT year and finishing their training, and anyone that is then starting their training as of September. So yeah, I just want to try and help as many people as I can, so hopefully these videos are going to be helpful. Okay, so some questions I will answer are from NQT to Bs, and some are from Trainee to Bs who will start next year. So I'm going to start with the NQT ones. So these are people that are in the same position as me right now, so they're finishing their training and going into their NQT years in September. Okay, so the first question was, how many interviews did you do before getting your job? I'm worried I won't get one. So I was very lucky. I only had one interview. The job that I applied for came out in February and the interview was in March. So this was actually very early compared to most jobs that come out. However, I know lots and lots of people that have had way more than just one interview or have applied for lots more than one job. So yeah, definitely don't get down if that is you, because you are definitely not alone. There's lots and lots of people that are in that position, especially at the moment. Someone who is really good to follow is my lovely friend who's on my course, who is Miss Saunders Teaching on Instagram. I'll tag her below so you can find her. She had lots of interviews, she had lots of applications that she put in, and some she didn't even hear back from, so she had quite a hard time with her interview process, but on her Instagram she's been really honest about it. She's absolutely lovely, so I'm sure she would have lots and lots of advice for you if you messaged her about the process. My advice would be, I've got 3 posts that are hopefully helpful to you if you are still applying at the moment. So the first post is about your actual application and the kind of things you should put in your application. Another post that I've done is about a portfolio, which I really recommend that you take to your interview or you send before your interview. I think that will put you in really good stead. And then the third post that I've done is about interview tips. So some example questions and just kind of helpful advice about how to prepare for your interview. So the next question I had was from Educating Year 1. And they said, I'm concerned about how my NQT year might look. Have you heard from your school? So I feel like this is a really difficult question to answer, just because obviously no one really knows what September and beyond is going to look like in terms of school. So our schools probably have no idea of how our NQT year is actually going to look. I would say though they are going to be very aware that our training has been cut short and that we're perhaps not as prepared as we could have been. So I think they're going to have to put in a lot of support to help us all. So yeah, they're definitely going to be really aware of that, so just remember that. What I'm going to be doing is I am going to be going into my school that I'll start in September when I finish my training. So I would advise maybe going to do that if you're a little bit worried about what September could look like, because if we are still going to be in bubbles, then at least if you go in now, you can kind of get a feel for what that's like and how that's working. You could also go in and meet some of the children that will be in your class, so that could be really useful as well. And also if you have got lots of questions whilst you're in school, you could ask them and maybe get some idea of what they're thinking next year could look like. Okay, so the next question was from Neve Gibson, and she said, have you got any CPD or reading on extracurricular to help with the Teacher Standard 8 evidence. Teacher Standard 8 is to fulfil wider professional responsibilities. So this is kind of about making positive contributions to the wider life of the school. It's also about deploying support staff effectively. So that's something I'm going to touch on in this answer. And it's kind of about communicating with parents, helping, maybe to run a club, things like that. So Neve asked about kind of anything to do with extracurricular. I personally don't know of any reading or anything on this, so if you do, maybe comment below. But what I would maybe recommend is that you could, to try and meet this standard, you could make a plan of kind of what you would do, perhaps in September, if you were running a club, so maybe like a half-term plan of what each session could look like, because then although you haven't actually physically been able to run the club, you've then at least got some kind of ideas written down of what you would do. So I think that if your uni is happy with something like that, that could really help. Also, because it says about deploying support staff, I've done a post on how best to have your TAs in your class, so that they're helping you and helping the children as much as possible. So I will put a link to that below. But all of the advice that I got from that was, well, firstly from being a TA myself, but also from the Education Endowment Foundation. That's a really good website to look at for anything to do with TAs. So you could put together some kind of evidence to help you with that. There is also a course on TES that is all about deploying staff effectively. So that would be a really good course to do. Okay, so the next question was from Miss Leaves_skit, and she said, do you know how transition will work this year? Any ideas for transition activities? So I actually messaged her about this and we had a little chat about it, and we basically decided that transition isn't actually going to happen this year. Obviously, usually you would go and meet your new class in maybe June or July, and then you would have met them before September and they would kind of know who you were and they would have done that whole move up transition thing. Obviously now children aren't all going to be back in school before the end of the summer, so transition isn't actually going to happen. So when I spoke to her, we kind of discussed how transition is pretty much going to be the first few weeks back in September, potentially. So we kind of talked about how maybe we could think about the first week instead for our transition. So what I really recommend is that you go and watch Good Morning Miss Foster, Jen, and Miss Wright, Beck. Go and watch their lives that they are doing at the moment. They've done one so far, and they're all about preparing for that first kind of few weeks back. So they've got lots of activity ideas and things like that, and they're doing a little series on it. So they've done one so far and they're going to be doing more. So that is really, really helpful. Another one to go and look at is Miss Syrupbo. She has a video about some first week activities too. One I absolutely love is with a basket. So you as the teacher bring in a basket of things that kind of represent you. So I'll link that as well. For one of my PGCE targets recently, I've had to try and think about the first week. So a few ideas that I had. I want to get the children to create some bunting to put up in my classroom. And that's going to have like all details about them, like their hobbies, the kind of things they like to do, what they like about school, all things like that. So it can kind of represent all the children across the classroom, and it will help me to learn a little bit about them. I really want to introduce mindfulness. I think that those first few weeks are going to be really full of anxiety, and children and teachers are going to be quite worried about what it's going to look like. I want to introduce mindfulness to try and help with that. I think reading is going to be really important. Obviously I'm quite a big advocate for reading anyway, but I think that kind of the new term, bringing in a story and trying to introduce them to the reading area and kind of the selection of books, because I think reading probably at that time is going to be quite a saviour just to relax everyone and to all enjoy it together as a class. And I think kind of one of the main things is to just really give them like a proper classroom tour so that they know where everything is, how everything works. Introduce maybe like growth mindset. I think that's going to be really important this year. Have a calm corner. I know there's lots and lots of advice out there on calm corners at the moment. So yeah, just to try and ease everyone in and make sure that all of the children are comfortable and happy. So the next question I had was from Miss J Teachers, who is Miss Jeffers, and she asked, should I apply to a one form entry school as an NQT? So my job is in a one form entry school. It was where I was on placement, so I actually already know it quite well, which obviously does give me an advantage. But I know from being there on placement that you are not alone. I know people think that in a one form entry school it could mean that you just have no support and you're alone in your planning. But I know at my school that's definitely not the case, and I'm sure that would be the same in most schools that are one form entry. So I know that in my school I'm going to be in year 5, and I will be doing some of my planning with the year 6 teacher, which is really, really helpful. Also, schools can often have previous year's planning, so then you can take that and adapt it to your class. So that's really helpful. You definitely don't be put off one form entry schools. I personally don't think that you're going to lack support in them. If anything, you should get more support because you're the only teacher in that year. So yeah, so definitely don't be put off, and ask lots of questions. If you are applying for one, ring them up, ask lots of questions about the planning process and anything else that you would potentially be worried about. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the trainee to be questions. So the first one was from Classroom Journey, and they said that they are worried about subject knowledge. Have I got any tips for this? So what I would say is, with subject knowledge, don't get too bogged down in it. Realistically, you actually learn as you go. I really think there is no point in revising long division, for example, now, when you could potentially not even teach it, or maybe if you do teach it, it might not be until May next year. So I just think that, yeah, you can kind of learn as you go. If there is something you're particularly worried about, like I was worried about maths, then yeah, it does help if you do something towards it so you feel a little bit more confident going in September. So one of the great things about teaching is that you are constantly learning. So don't be worried and think that you need to know everything, because you definitely don't. I think there's probably hardly any teachers that go into a topic and think, oh yeah, I've got this covered, I know it all, I don't need to look up anything. So yeah, definitely don't worry too much about your subject knowledge at the moment. If you do want to obviously look into things though, I would say BBC Bite Size is great, really, really helpful. I've done a post on the English books that I've used throughout my training this year that have been really useful. So definitely go and look at that post. I'll put a link for that below. And then I'm also going to be doing one on the maths books and science books that I've used, and then potentially any other books if that's helpful to you. So the last question is from Louisa Alice. It was really lovely to hear from her because she is starting at Cambridge in September. And she was wondering what the workload is like and how many hours I spent working on my PGC each week. So basically, it's a really, really intense year. I'm not going to lie, there is a lot of work. Sometimes there's less, sometimes there's more, but generally, yeah, it's quite full on. When you've got placement, obviously you've got more work than kind of when you're at uni. And then obviously when you've got assignments to do, you kind of got to add that on top of it all as well. I did a post with my lovely friend Miss A on here on Instagram, who also is at Cambridge with me. We did a post all about work-life balance in your training year, so I'd really recommend that you go and look at that. We both managed to try and keep a work-life balance most of the time, so hopefully those tips could be helpful to you. Yeah, so generally it is a lot of work and it takes over your life. But it's the most amazing year. You will have the best time ever. There is no doubt about that. So yeah, definitely don't be worried about how much work there is. But yeah, just be prepared for quite an intense year, but a really, really fun year as well. Okay, so I I hope that that's helpful to any of you that ask the questions, and hopefully to anyone else that's kind of in similar situations or have got the same kind of worries. I'll hopefully do something like this again soon. So if you've got any worries, make sure that you put them in ready for my next video. Okay, hopefully see you soon. Bye.